convention center, but awesome. Yeah, it's a resort, I'm telling you, it's like walking into a casino, you never have to leave, you don't know what time of day it is or what day it is at all. And all of, it was
prices
huge.
are very reasonable, particularly if you go in the middle of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, 2 days in the water park was more than enough, but it was large. We've been to a lot of them. I get freaked out, like my kids will tell you what's the fastest way to get mom out of the pool, tell her there's a Band-Aid. And so I really get creeped out by that stuff. It was so clean and like, I didn't feel like I needed to disinfect after, you know.
That's important.
That's an important part.
We took my niece and nephew to Hershey.
Oh, we love Hershey. Their water park is really nice too.
I think Charlotte was doing that this summer.
We went to, where was I go back? Coco You put it, oh, that was awful.
Yeah.
That was, honestly, I said to the girls, and we were there for a birthday party, friends of ours rented the place out for the weekend for their son's birthday. I'd never been there before. I will never be returning. I literally thought I needed to take my kids in for like all their immunizations again, because I felt that skewed out by it.
All right, great.
So,
All right, Jim. See you.
this is one joint with just a hotel. It was the nice park, and the sound was there's just like a lot of places to eat, with like 6 or 7 restaurants.
Did you have anybody's cans under the lawn there?
Everything was,
Because I noticed that some of the people that had put that this
it was weird because here we are, wearing our bathing suits through like the main entrance of the resort.
On the porch in front of the, this is after cleaning the cans.
People are wearing
We go and look
it's
outside.
just a shooting outside, so we're laughing. It's like half of us are sitting in the Bahamas and the other half are coming off of the ski slopes.
Take that wall off.
I noticed, I said, geez, they're recycling buckets too.
Yeah, I hear great, I haven't been to Great Wall for that, because they're not very well when they first opened this gorgeous and starting to go down. I don't think so.
Wine bottles waiting.
And this is right at the tree farm.
I wasn't drinking during that, so I didn't even want to.
I was gonna
I
give
just
her
left the salt before we changed my shoes so I didn't have mud in
Doctor
it.
said, no.
And,
So I gave her my Sunday martini.
My husband has to have his.
That's only 4
you
months.
know, the pleasure of being honest.
Yeah, well, technically they say Sunday doesn't count. 40 days of Lent.
That's right.
Sunday's the fifth
Better
day.
than meeting this.
This is 45. And I've heard this from some of the parish.
At noon time on
said it too.
Saturday.
Are we gonna think that's
I heard,
But I don't do that. Yeah, I gave it up.
Sorry.
I only have it once a week anyway. You know, so.
Jim and I will have a glass of wine.
You're calling me a ringer, I'm about to call you.
Memo forthcoming tomorrow. Memo forthcoming tomorrow.
I'm a vegetarian. Next Friday is very easy.
Sorry. I'll be in that. You did say something.
Weekly memo said 6. I didn't see that.
Listen, Abby's from New York. She wants me.
You set?
Yep.
Everyone set? Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order with a salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Terry, notice of publication?
Yes, Mayor, take notice that this special meeting has been advertised and posted in accordance with Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 2 through in Public Law 1975.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Buchanan.
Here.
Rillo.
Here.
Kilpatrick. Here. Lembo.
Here.
Melendez. Novak.
Here.
COAH matters, Counselor?
Yes, this is Mike Tiziano from Tiziano.
Mike, do you have a mic there?
I'd like to
Please.
Ken, if you want, you know what, that's good, stay at the
Yeah,
table.
I mean,
That way it's easier to read your notes.
Yeah, this I think is going to be short and
If
sweet.
you'd introduce yourself again so the
Sure.
machine picks it up.
My name is Michael A. Jedzeniak. I'm an attorney with Jeffrey R. Serenian and Associates, and this is the borough's special Mount Laurel counsel.
Okay.
So the purpose of the meeting tonight is to get past the next step in this process that I'm sure you're all aware of. And you also know that I'm pinch hitting for Jeff Serenian and Mike Edwards, so I'm not perfectly versed on everything, but I do know that the goal of the drill tonight is to follow up on the action that was taken on Friday night, March 29th, by the planning board. And what they did is they adopted the borough's amended housing element fair share plan under protest, which they perfectly had a perfect right to do under Mount Laurel 2. So the next step is for the borough council to consider endorsing that plan under protest also, which will put the borough in a position where it can now file its plan with the court and the special master and move forward towards the review and approval process.
Okay. Are there any questions from the governing body? Being no questions, I open it first to the public hearing? No.
First, we read the resolution.
All right, I'll take a motion, if you'd read the resolution?
Yes, sir. Resolution 2018-117, resolution of the Borough Council of Borough of Sayreville, Middlesex County, New Jersey, endorsing an amended housing element and fair share plan under protest pursuant to South Burlington County NAACP versus Mount Laurel Township, 92 New Jersey, 158, 1983. Whereas the Borough Council adopted Resolution 2016-197 on June 13, 2016, which provided as follows. Now therefore be it resolved by the Borough Council of the Borough of Sayreville that it does approve hereby the proposed housing element and fair share plan presented at its June 13, 2016 council meeting, further approves and endorses the proposed housing element and fair share plan dated May 28, 2016, revised June 10, 2016, with amendments thereto, which is on file with the Borough Clerk and available for public viewing. Subject to the Borough finally negotiating a complete and final settlement agreement and housing element and fair share plan approved by the court and subsequent for formal adoption of the master plan amendment. And whereas, according to the plain, unambiguous language of this resolution, the sole action taken by the borough was to conditionally approve a draft housing element and fair share plan, and quite clearly and applicably did not authorize the execution of any settlement agreement. And whereas the borough anticipated that it would have a second bite at the apple before authorizing the execution of a complete and final settlement agreement, since only a draft of an agreement existed when the borough adopted Resolution 2016-197. Not that it was delegating any authority of its Mount Laurel attorney to negotiate for the mayor to sign any agreement. And whereas the fact that the primary purpose of the agreement involved zoning a function squarely and exclusively within the jurisdiction of the Borough Council, it was particularly important for the Borough Council to approve final form of agreement. And whereas the Borough Council was not satisfied that they were being fully informed by their Mount Laurel attorney about the settlement agreement and about all of their rights, which culminated in the council retaining a whole new set of professionals. And whereas Jeffrey R. Serenian Associates, LLC, one of the new professionals, has brought a motion on the borough's behalf asserting inter alia that the agreement signed by the mayor is not binding and enforceable because the Borough Council never authorized the mayor to execute that agreement. And whereas the court has ordered the borough to adopt ordinances and take various other measures to implement the settlement agreement, but acknowledge that if he grants the borough pending motion, he will give the borough the opportunity to present an amended housing element fair share plan for the court's consideration, one that is not constrained by any agreement. And whereas, as a result of the foregoing, on March 29, 2018, the Planning Board adopted an amended housing element and fair share plan that complies with the order of the court. Because of the substance of the plan, it's constrained by the settlement agreement. And whereas, however, Planning Board adopted amended housing element fair share plan under protest as permitted under Mount Laurel law thereby preserving the borough's right to adjust course if the borough prevails in its claim, as detailed in the pending motion, that there is no enforceable agreement, and that therefore it is free to comply in a matter of its choosing. And now therefore be it resolved that the Borough of Saraville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, does hereby endorse and amend Housing Element and Fair Share Plan adopted by the Planning Board on March 29, 2018. Be it further resolved that the endorsement of the amended Housing Element and Fair Share Plan is taken under protest, and that therefore it seeks court's approval of said plan under protest.
Is there a motion?
Public.
Oh, I'm sorry, public portion. Jim?
Jim Robinson, 11 Burrell Square, Parlin, New Jersey. Can somebody please explain for us what the March 29th amended plan says or does?
Counselor?
I can give you a general overview. I know that the plan has an assumption that your round 3 obligation is 785 units, which was based on the settlement that is under
Yes.
contestation. And there are various compliance techniques. And if you have a copy of the Housing Element and Fair Share Plan, you should turn to page 41 because it identifies a whole set of compliance techniques and credits. But it does conclude that
Now, are those new compliance techniques, or were they in the old plan?
I'm not sure, but I can, if you would want, I can identify the individual.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Okay,
What I'm
for the
really
record.
asking is what the difference is, what's new in the amended plan.
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm substituting for Mr. Serenian, so. Do you want me to read the, okay.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. So we start with a 785 unit Mount Laurel obligation for round 3. There are prior cycle credits, and I'm just going to read the names. Lakeview age-restricted rental, 90 credits. Lakeview, 100 credits. Parlin New Club, 1 credit. Then there's an existing 100% affordable development called Gillette Manor, age-restricted rental, 84 credits.
How many, 84?
84, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Existing inclusionary development named Chase Partners, which is an age-restricted rental project, 22 credits. An existing group home called Caring House 54, 4 credits. There is, I'm assuming this is a proposed accessory apartment program of 10 credits. There is also a proposed inclusionary development, or several of them. Luxury Point, 170 credits. Cross Avenue / National Lead Site, 25 credits. Camelot 1, 26 credits. Camelot 2, 45 credits. Another proposed 100% affordable development called River Road Redevelopment Area, 88 credits. And then there are also 197 bonus credits, and I'm sure they're rental bonus credits, for a total of 862 total credits anticipated, subject to the court's approval.
Okay, so this is substantially different than the plan that was approved before. For instance, the 84 units in Gillette Manor, they weren't in the original plan, as I know, and they only came about as a result of members of the public asking about them.
These
Yeah.
are actually, all of those things, all of those changes that are in there that were not present in going back over a year now are the credits in which Susan Gruhl and had found.
Thank
As a
you.
result of her work, as a result of the council and the public getting involved and saying, something doesn't smell right here, something seems wrong.
Okay.
And as a result, you just heard now a litany of other properties that were never considered. And of course, the River Road piece in there with now 100% affordable, although it was originally in there for a different amount. So
Okay, and Cross Avenue is in there, I think you said for 24 or 25, something like
25.
that.
That's correct.
25.
And Camelot is 1 and 2?
Yes.
That is correct.
Yes.
How many were proposed before? Was
Let's
there
see.
Camelot 1,
Well,
2?
I believe that those, can you read off the
those-
Camelot 1 and 2? Those are the same
Those are
because,
the same.
because
Yeah.
right now.
Camelot hasn't changed.
No.
No, because this is what that intervenor status apparently, and a lot of the
Okay.
research that I've done, those stayed in there because that was what we were ordered to do by the court.
Okay.
Those additional credits, though, were able to be inserted into this housing plan.
Okay, then I have a couple questions, and I appreciate that Gillette Manor was put in there. I asked that question any number of times of the former planner, Mr. Leon Cavello. The last time I asked, and I got tired of coming to council meetings because I was still given the answer, he didn't know and he didn't have time to find out.
Yep.
So I am very happy that Susan Gruhl found those. I was criticized for recommending Susan Gruhl come in. I'm very happy that the governing body took that advice despite the criticism and that she was able to find credits for us. What about Heritage, the apartment complex that was the subject of the conversion statute, where we should get 20% credit? Is that in there?
It is, I do not see it on this list here, but that may be the site that I heard was, you were taking credit for age-restricted, 100, I think it was 300 age-restricted. Is that the correct site?
No.
No, that's a different one.
Okay.
But I will add that in Susan's work with this, and you would probably know this better than anybody, but I definitely know that, you know, when it comes to COAH and what you can take credit for, there was limits on what we could take as far as the number of senior housing units that we could
Yes.
apply.
Yep.
So it could very well be that they were acknowledged,
But
but
I
they
don't
may
think
not
Heritage
fit.
was going to be senior. Heritage was going to be low income.
I would
And-
have to
And
def-
not only did the conversion statute require that it be low income, and Judge Hurley mentioned that in his decision,
Mm-hmm.
but it required that it be 20% low income.
That's correct.
Oh, you're talking about
Yeah.
the original, the
Right.
front end of Kaplan?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. When you were saying
And he didn't do it.
Heritage, I have to be honest with you, Jim.
Okay.
I never,
Well, there are a lot of things here, so I
Jim, do you
understand.
have any specific questions
I
about
do.
this resolution?
Yes, they are on this resolution. I'm sorry if that wasn't clear to you.
Please proceed
And there are
with the
things that I'm
resolution.
asking if they were in this resolution or not. Okay? And since I started to ask some questions, I've heard from folks involved in this all throughout the state, and I understand that in a lot of places, a 20% setback is or set aside is involved rather than 15%.
Well, there,
Does this anticipate 15%, or has this gone to the standard that a lot of folks?
Jim,
Excuse
we're
me,
just-
Mayor, I'm
we're
asking you a
just
question.
dealing- Hey,
Has this
Jim, first of all, you address me. Secondly, we're working on this resolution.
Yes,
So
Mayor,
please-
but this
please-
Part of the resolution, Mayor.
references the
Which-
planning
which
resolution.
part is-
Part of the, it's part of the
Setbacks.
resolution.
You
Mayor?
can come back
Mayor,
to
the
public
resolution,
Because we're voting on what the planning board just did.
That's
He's
right.
just asking what the planning board did.
Mayor, let me suggest to you
references it.
that the reason that we are here now, the reason we are here now at this late date, trying to fix something, is that the public didn't know about this when this came up years ago, that the public was precluded from, and when I say the public, I mean folks like the people here who know a little bit about this.
Jim, have you
Were
gone to the
precluded
planning
from
board yet?
asking questions
gone to the planning
and giving
board?
input.
It was on television with the planning
Mayor,
board.
I didn't know
It was
about
no
the, and we'll
secret.
get to that,
Jim,
Mayor. This is the
may not.
public portion.
All right.
Okay,
No,
so
the
what I
se-
am doing, Mayor, is I am asking about a resolution which references the March 29th,
Let's proceed,
the
Jim.
Holy Thursday meeting of the planning board.
You're into
I was
8
at the
minutes.
cathedral on Holy
So
Thursday
let's
for
go-
Holy
let's-
Thursday Mass. I
let's-
wasn't here, Mayor.
Let's proceed here, Jim.
But that's what I'm asking about.
What is your question?
My question, and maybe others understood it, but for those who didn't, I will ask again. Does this anticipate a 15% set aside or a 20% set aside? Was my question clear to you?
yeah, no, I understood the question.
Thank you.
But I don't know the answer other than to say that in the Mount Laurel Arena, the typical benchmark is you have a 15% set aside for rental
Yes.
developments and a 20% set aside for what we call for sale units. So chances are, if this is a rental development, 15%. If it's just for sale, will be at 20% set aside.
That certainly is the case, but there are a lot of towns that have gone to 20% for rental, right?
Yeah, there are, we've seen a lot more over the last 5 or 6 years, sir.
Yes.
Yes, that's true.
And this plan was adopted, was created within the last 5 or 6 years when most other towns were doing a 20% set aside for rental, which would have lowered substantially the number of market rate apartments that we have to build. Okay? That was my point there. I hope that was clear to everybody. And let me ask one other thing, as long as we're on this subject. When we are making this appeal to the judge, do we take into account that the planning board that adopted the original plan met in closed session improperly, and that a number of those members were not even legally appointed to the board? Do we take that into account?
I believe that is a subject of the motion that's pending before the judge. Yes, I think
Good.
that has been
Okay.
raised.
Good. And
But I'm not 100% sure. I think it is involved in that motion, but I'm not 100%.
Jim, if I may
Okay.
interject for a moment?
Yes.
If, as you're aware, we've already been before the judge, okay? And there was a brief originally submitted, and then we went in and actually did, what was the date on that last one, Dan, when we actually responded to Kaplan and the intervener's
before the
reaction?
last-
So,
it was right before
just
the last
recently. The brief with the legal arguments is about, we estimated it in pounds because it was a little bit easier, but hundreds and hundreds of pages. Within that, and I read through every single one of those pages, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And any stone that could potentially be unturned here, any argument that was able to be proven through Jeff Serenian in his office has been laid on the table to the point where for the first time throughout this entire process, I can put my head on a pillow and feel like finally somebody understood the shenanigans that went on over the past 2 years here. And my hats off and plaudits to Serenian and his team, yourself, Mike, for doing the research and the work and piecing together all the documents.
Well, I appreciate very much that this is happening, because you know there were a number of us, myself included, who have come here for a year and questioned these things, raised these issues, in fact, argued for a different planner to be assigned this and a different attorney to come in. That was finally done. It was done over objection. It was done without, you know, I was even the mayor. You criticized me for suggesting that Susan Gruhl be appointed. I think today we find out that's maybe one of the best decisions that has been made by the borough in a very long time, and I'm glad that appointment was made. I'm glad we are going in this direction.
I think that
Because it is what I and other members of the public have been asking for probably a year and 2 months, until we got tired of coming.
I think you would be happy if you, and the brief is public, so you can read that now at this point. It's no longer just strategy.
Unlike some
You
people,
can
I
read
read everything
I
that
know you do.
is
But
presented.
I think you would be happy to see, Jim, or Mr. Robinson, that one of the key arguments here is the fact that the public was completely left out of this process. And that was a very, very important piece of this puzzle. And you know what? I'm going to turn around and say that some of the evidence that was able to be presented was conversations that were here at the microphone, conversations that you and other residents had, in order to prove that the public was left out of this process, which can't be done. You know that can't be done.
As late as tonight, there are attempts to stifle me from speaking, from raising questions on things that are obviously pertinent. So I appreciate that comment. Now, as long as you have raised that, Councilwoman, I want to tell you this. There was a meeting in the summer, I think it was in June, then Council President Buchanan chaired that meeting. It was held in 310.
Yes.
The mayor wasn't here. And at that meeting, some folks, I think Mrs. Mahoney was one of them, raised the issue that the meeting wasn't online, that people didn't know about it, and we were told that when there are special meetings as important as this, that they would be advertised online. Now, I understand this was advertised in the paper. It wasn't on the website. And I can tell you that at least that everybody in the audience and I exchanged emails And there were a few other people exchanged emails today, and they only saw it late, and they aren't here, but certainly they would be here, and you know who they are. On something as important as this, it is important that not just that you comply with the law. I'm sure we comply. I'm sure Terry complies with the law with everything she does, and I'm sure it was advertised in the Home News Tribune. But in this day and age, things like this ought to be put on the website. And I would just remind you, this isn't just a matter of convenience. But I want to say, as you just said, the reason we are in this boat today is because when the planning board first undertook this, they did it in secret, illegally in secret, because they went into closed session improperly. Nobody knew what they were discussing. Nobody knew about this case. Nobody knew about this suit. They got no comments from the public. They got the comments and the advice of the two professionals that the governing body has since seen fit to dump to bring in people whose area of expertise this is. So it's not just, yeah, we want to know about this. It's not just a matter of convenience. It is important that the public know about this. And I will say what happened here is a classic example of why the public needs to know about this, because, as you said, the things that went into this brief were raised by members of the public. So it's important. And I would ask, Mayor, I would ask you, for a commitment from you that when there are meetings like this, like the March 29th meeting, first I heard about it was when I read this resolution. When there are things as important as this, they should be online. People check that. They don't always, you know, when you're my age, it's kind of hard to read the legal notices in the Home News Tribune.
I know what you mean.
People don't always see them.
Print.
But people go online all the time. And when I started to get the emails, I forget what day it was, people from folks, they said, well, I checked the website. That was the first thing they did. They checked the website. It wasn't there. We brag about wonderful technology. It's very easy to put something on the website. Say there's a meeting that is very important to some people anyway, at least to some members of the public. So I would certainly appreciate it. Mayor, I would ask you for a commitment that if there is another meeting as important as this, whether it be the planning board or the new committee that was created by Councilman Grillo's suggestion, or this body, that if it's a meeting as important as this, or actually on any matter, as importance is a relative term, that it be put online. That's one of the beauties of the internet. You can change things in a moment. Boom, you put it up. I would ask you, Mayor, for that commitment.
Jim, there are 7 elected officials up here. There's a borough administrator, a borough attorney. We will take it under advisement, and we will have a thorough research done of both the law and our practices. But I will say, in the 18 years that I've been mayor, I have, to the best of my ability, practiced transparency. Now, to some people, transparency may have a different definition, but nothing has ever been hidden. And as far as I know from the planning board, most people don't go to the planning board and ask them the questions. So I do recommend, and they request, that people come to their meetings, and they will go as in-depth and as far down in the weeds as
Well,
individuals
actually,
want.
Mayor, that sounds very nice. The record indicates, no, that this was all done in closed session, and when they went into closed session, they did not even read the resolution indicating why they were going into closed session.
I would
That's why,
recommend you
Mayor,
go there.
the public didn't know what they were discussing, and that is why we are in the
True.
mess that
We
we
will
are in.
certainly bring-
It's
And Mayor,
absolutely true.
The next-
respectfully, Mayor, I'm just making a suggestion
you're-
that when you
you're-
have a meeting, it be advertised online. I'm kind of amazed that I'm getting an argument
Duly
on a
noted.
suggestion that if
Jim,
we have
what you're
special
doing
meetings, that it be
is
online.
you're-
Thank you very
you're
much. I appreciate the kindness
Standing on a
of
crate in Hyde
the
Park.
body.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, or Steve?
Steve Malineski, 28 Scarlet Drive in Parlin. Question concerning the new proposal by the planning board.
I can't hear Steve.
Is the new proposal by the planning board? Here you're writing a resolution to approve it. Have
protest.
we seen it?
Under protest.
Under protest.
Under protest, have we seen it? Why haven't we seen it? That's number one. Number two, I'm hearing that the units, 785 units is our tally under protest, correct?
Yes, but the,
Okay.
This whole thing
We-
is.
The tally that I just heard for credits was 862.
because they found more credits.
Correct. But is that offset against the 785,
Well, I-
meaning that we have
One
nothing?
one of the things that we're planning on doing is now that we don't really need all of the building because we have these extra credits.
That's my question. But secondly, and more importantly, this is all coming down to be 785, even if we have to crank it down because now we have 862, viable credits under protest to the courts. So now it's up to the courts to accept our amended plan with the credits?
They've already accepted the credits. The credits that we put in here, they have accepted
No.
that. They were credits that we
That's,
didn't
no,
get.
they did not. No. Absolutely not. I wish.
Otherwise, you
we
wouldn't be on the
here.
protest.
We
Right,
wouldn't
we
in
wouldn't
this-
be here.
I mean, it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that really what we're doing here is a necessity in order to continue to move forward with our litigation. What needs to happen is a fair share plan needed to be presented to the judge, whether we agreed with it or not. And the components that were in there originally, dating back to all the way, let's see, the
2016.
June 13, 2016 meeting, that needed to be included in there, because that is, portions of that is what the judge ordered we had to comply with. Now, what we were able to do with this amended version of the Fair Share Housing Plan, the only amendment really that's occurred within these 350 odd pages, which is how much this housing plan fair share because of Susan's work, it now also includes the pieces that Susan has found with the help of, Serenian's firm and her firm. Now we can present to the judge, here is the original housing plan that was put in 2016. Through our due diligence and the work of these people now, and different planners, different professionals, we have now found all of these other units that were not considered, not counted. What we're doing now is we're willing to accept this housing plan because we have to for basically legal procedure, but we're doing so in protest. We are not happy with this plan. And the reason, and the reason why we're not is all of the things that we presented with Serenian in our legal case. So yes, we get it. We have to approve this because you're saying under procedures of Mount Laurel and under COAH, we have to do this. We don't want it. We're unhappy with it. If you actually read this resolution, it lays out some of the arguments that were put into the brief. So if you read all, I think, 12, what I call the wherefore art thou Romeos, it's the whereases here, that is laying out some of our legal arguments. And what we're saying is, we're doing this under protest because if we don't say under protest, kind of like in a baseball game, okay, you might have won the game, but we feel that there were errors made and we're going to protest what that umpire said in that run that came across. That's what we're doing here. We have to do this because of legal procedures. We hate it. We don't agree with it. We think we have excellent arguments to support why this original Fair Share Housing Agreement should be torn up. And in addition to that, to support that even more, we're going to include in this 340-page new amended copy what our new planner has uncovered. So please, Judge, look at this, listen to what we said, review our brief of umpteen pounds, and on April 9th, when you render your decision, take that into consideration. And basically what we're doing is waiting to see what's going to be said on April 9th. Other things can happen along the way in that short amount of time. There could be negotiations that bring Kaplan to the table. There could be negotiations that bring National Lead to the table. Because quite frankly, I'm pretty damn impressed with what was put forth in our, in front of the judge. I'm pretty confident. I feel really good about that. I hope that the judge feels that way. And in that April 9th decision, if things don't go the way that we're hoping it does, or at least some of us are hoping it does, we might have to look at another possible option here, and that could very well include an appeal to another level, to the appellate level. That's, to my understanding, where we are in this process. But Jim's questions were completely valid because this resolution is not just a 2-page piece of paper. This resolution is tied to a 350-page fair share housing plan. So to ask questions about that is completely valid at this point. I hope I answered some of your questions. I hope I've done a pretty fair job.
I thought you did an excellent job. The only thing I wanted to add to that is
Thank you.
Susan Gruel also found that some of the credits that were included in the former plan were really not creditworthy. So there was some additions and subtractions in there.
We only have
Absolutely.
87 now.
I did not bring up the 111 units that I don't even know if I even want to go down that
They don't
path,
even.
but they really did not exist.
They didn't exist.
So we needed
Okay.
to solve for different
But
things.
see, this speaks to some of the points that we're trying to make here in the public portion that Jim's brought up, that we're bringing up. You know, it might be a lot of work for the council or someone or group in the council, but like you said, it's a 300-something page document. You know, dummying it down for the public. Give us a synopsis so we can know what's contained in there at the highest level so that we can understand. We're not going to read necessarily, well, I've done it, 300-something page documents and trying to understand it. So we need to get our arms around that. And one of the things I'm going to ask the council, and I'm going to get a little bit tough on this one, I've been asking for 6 months for a pro forma and a capacity plan on what all this is going to mean to the town. That's infrastructure, that's everything. Mr. Frankel has been gracious enough to get me in touch with Mr. Leon Cavella, who has been absolutely
Nothing.
uninformative, to be nice. And the data on the form is erroneous, and he admitted that. And he didn't have tax input from Mr. Cap, I think it is.
Cups,
and,
yeah.
Cups.
Cup, and from
Cornell.
Mr. Cornell.
Cornell. You know, so that has to be done, because this is all well and good. We got a planning board producing something, but we're not aware of it. 2, we don't know what it's going to cost. And it doesn't have to be, you don't need to know the exact number. And this is what, Vicki, I think I sent you an email on.
Yeah.
I've lived through this in Wall Street. I'm retired. But capacity planning, pro forma estimates, they're based on, doesn't matter if it's 2,900 homes, 2,000 homes, what's the cost going to be? There's got to be some idea so that we can sit and plan. A planning board that doesn't plan is not a planning board, to put it mildly. And that's what I'd like to get, some commitment that someone is working with this to look at the capacity plan, the pro forma. I volunteer to work to help do this. I've done this in my career on large projects. But this needs to be done. Secondly, I'm going to talk to what Jim just said about notifications, putting it on the website. Okay, notifications. Did you get a notice from Nixle about recyclable? It was pushed.
Yeah.
Why are we not pushing this? Sign up, sayreville.com. What do you want notification on? Planning board, council meeting, notes. Why do I have to go to a website when I go there on Sunday morning? The agenda's not there for Monday. I go back at 1 o'clock, maybe it's there. But if we push and we sign up for it, it's a simple technology, and we could have notifications, Jim, your point, pushed to you, like we get from a Nixle or from any other vendor that's out there. And I know this is a large undertaking for the council. We really appreciate what you're doing, and it's a lot of work, and it's never ending, but we have to learn from our mistakes of the past, move forward like we're trying to do, Mr. Mayor, and get this thing done. No more behind the curtain. We want to know what the planning board is doing, and it's got to be clear to the council before anyone says approved. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Ruth Ann?
Ruth Ann Mahoney, 2 Gerard Place, Parlin. I'm just Josephine P. Public, Q Public,
I can't
whatever.
hear, Roseanne,
I'm just the Josephine Q Public person. I've come now over a year to these meetings, asked some of these same questions as just a resident, unknowing of some of the other information. I've asked about, not money-wise, but what's going to happen with police, fire, ambulance, all these things, water, sewers, with all the extra building. And now we're not just, and now, well, we have this building, but there'll be others in a few years. There's no answers. You ask about the planning board. I attempted, and you all know, to go to the planning board meetings, and I was truly embarrassed by the planning board. You wonder why people don't go? Right there. Who wants to go and stand in front of people and then be ridiculed, and then they're in a hurry? I know it's not, it does have to do with this, because that's why we always don't know. They make you feel so uncomfortable. So I really haven't probably gone back too often, because I don't want to be ridiculed at all. I shouldn't be. It's questions, and all you're asking is because you need information. You want information. Somehow that has to be resolved. Has to be resolved. There's no reason for it. And as I said, I've come just as a regular resident and asked some of these questions, and it seems nothing is ever answered to simple things. I mean, what's going to happen with the infrastructure? Nobody has an answer. And obviously, Sayreville's infrastructure as it is now can't support the future housing that's anticipated. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth Ann.
Mayor, do you mind if I just answer Ruth Ann's question briefly? So you and Steve obviously have very valid points about the concerns about future cost of infrastructure services, et cetera. It doesn't feel like we're early in the process. We've been at this for almost 2 years. But as you see evidence tonight, we're still uncovering credits. We as the council only saw the River Road project about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which I think is a terrific idea. But it's, again, brand new in terms of the chronology of development. And so you're absolutely right. We do need to pro forma this out. But I think from the professional side, it's almost like trying to predict the score of a baseball game, but we've only played a few innings. And so we're not going to know the true cost of infrastructure because site plans haven't been done. Simple things like environmental assessments and borings, and we just don't know. So while you're right in terms of the need, I don't think right now we're at the point where we can even make remotely accurate predictions. And so I would ask that you understand that from where we are in the process. It's not that anyone's hiding information from you.
Steve,
It's that
Could I ask you to state what you do for a living, what your qualifications are, how you deal with this every day?
So I'm a professional city planner. I have a master's degree in planning, and I'm the first vice president of the Economic Development Corporation, Staten Island, where we do projects like this all the time. So you're right conceptually. I think it's just a little premature. But what I think the mandate really should be from this body is that any project that does come across, whether it's the planning board, the zoning board, the council, is that there is a in-depth analysis of what the infrastructure and services requirements will be. We don't typically see that on a planning board application, right? Because these projects are typically very small compared to what we're actually debating today. But as this project rolls out, remember this is going for the next, 8 years, right, through 2025, that there is a very critical lens put on so that we write this book chapter by chapter. And so, as I said before, no one's trying to pull the wool over your eyes in terms of what the infrastructure and services costs will be and that encumbrance, but it's just too early to give you an accurate number. So I ask that you understand that and appreciate that.
Can
Come on
I
up,
ask a
Ruth Ann.
question?
Come on up.
Oh,
Well, it's Ruth Ann, then I'll call you again, Steve.
When that estimate is going forth in the 8 years, will that also include, and I know you may not know now, Riverton? Because that also is going to affect that infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Riverton is part of this, so.
Right, right. Okay, and I just have one more thing. Did this planning board meeting happen after oral arguments on Thursday? Yes, okay.
Steve?
Yeah, Councilman Grillo, I mean, being in the same boat as you for part of my career, I totally understand it can't be that accurate. We don't know the number of houses. We don't know what the courts are going to do. However, there is a ballpark that can be gotten to say, hey, we do 1,000 families, we're going to get this, we're going to need that. It starts at the highest level, and then as things come to closure over the 8 years, and I think I said that at one of the meetings, this is not something that's all this year. But when I get something without infrastructure that says we have a deficit of $3.6 million per year, that's scary. And
Which you pointed out was probably erroneous, and the
Yeah.
work was probably not correct. But I think as we get closer to the finish line, which hopefully things are in our favor and what we're debating tonight, that yes, we should probably put together a preliminary pro forma. I think tonight is not the night, but
no, I'm
perhaps it's
not even saying
perhaps
that.
it's within the next 30 to 60 days once we get a determination on what things are going to be. I think, the other aspect, and of course the sort of versatile world of development is Riverton really was only a public presentation within the last 30 days or so. So that project has changed significantly than what we had been anticipating when we began the COAH process, right? And so all these things are changing, and we're going to have a versatile, elastic approach to the pro forma. But you're absolutely right. I just think we need to just make sure that we're doing what you're saying, but but permitting ourselves to have a little latitude.
And I agree with that and appreciate that. And if you could just possibly update us at your monthly meetings, like this way I don't have to come up here every council meeting and say, how are we with our performer? At least if we can get a little bit of an update from the group, and Mr. Grillo, if it's from you, fine, I don't care. As long as we can get information, and that's Jim's point, we need information, we want to be transparent, Mr. Mayor, you said, we want to get that, but I have no faith right now from what I've been hearing about the planning board. It got us into this mess, and I asked early on, what's the checks and balances on the planning board and what they're doing? And I think we need to tighten that up. Knowing that they're handpicked or that they're great people, I'm sure they all are, they give up their time, but are they qualified, and are they doing what they need to do, and so that we could understand, look at it, do they have a performer, do they have a longer-term plan? I think that would help us be more at ease. And again, I really encourage you to look at pushing information and just making a small modification to the website that people can sign up and sign up for the information they would like pushed to them. So we don't have to hunt for it. I'll take it on my phone if I'm going to the supermarket and see, hey, there's a meeting in an hour. I might redirect myself and go to that meeting. Thank you.
Steve, if you would, just state your name again for the record.
I'm sorry, Steve Melineski, 28 Scarlet Drive, Parlin.
Thank you.
Can I
Ken?
ask? Oh, while Ken comes up, Steve, can I ask you a question? Pro forma. When, and let's remove Saraville's and our COAH situation from the conversation. When would a pro forma typically be done in a project, in a housing project? When would you typically do that?
Well, I think the crux of that question is what is the scope, right? I think when we're looking at the potential for half a dozen or more sites to be developed, Saraville probably is in a unique position where we really should look at a global pro forma, right? What is our borough-wide concern? I don't know. I imagine through the COAH process all across New Jersey, other towns are encountering this type of mass development, right, happening in a relatively quick time. And so I think probably the responsible thing to do right now would be to assess all of our infrastructure. And I think we're doing that now with the GIS that we've allocated funding for our water, tubes.
I guess I'm losing you a little bit with my question. I said absent of Saraville, but let's go to Saraville then. Because you said that we're kind of early in this game, but I don't think we are early in this game. What we're early in, well, I don't even think we're early in the litigation. We're at the tail end of a litigation. Technically, if we didn't turn around and stop this process back in February of a year ago, this process would be done already. We would have ended up adopting a housing plan and actually having these buildings coming in. So let's start from that point then, and let's eliminate everything that happened from February 2016 till now. When should a pro forma had been done with the original fair share housing agreement? When should a pro forma had been done?
It probably should have been done a year and a half ago.
Okay. Okay, because I want to put that on the record to the public. Quite frankly, Steve, I'm with you, my friend. I want a pro forma. I want every other cost analysis that can be done. At this point, it's not that it's early in the game, Steve. It's late in the game, and the puzzle pieces are changing now. The pro forma should have been done before it even came to the council, before February of 2016. We needed to have the pro forma when this was being discussed and being brought up at the planning board before it ever came here. So what I think would be difficult for us to do right now, Steve, I can't see you though because I'm talking to this Steve, not this Steve now. I want to be able to get that information. I want a pro forma done. But now we have so many moving pieces that are in the hands of the judge and in the hands of this litigation and our very, very capable attorneys and our very capable new planner. I don't know how you even start a pro forma because we don't know what potentially we're going to end up with. But we should have had that pro forma done over a year ago. We should have had that at our hands so that we could have presented it to the public. And thank you, Steve, for clarifying, because that's what I thought. But I'm not in the world of planning. I'm in the world of language arts education.
And I want to just endorse what you're saying
Yeah.
is that, yes, you probably should have had a pro forma for the first COAH presentation. And at this point, what I said and what you echoed is that we are probably have too many moving parts at this point, but I don't know if that's going to be the case a month from now. And so I think you and I are saying the same thing, and
I think so.
I'm glad that I was able to, I guess, clear up my position for you.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
and
the point behind it is this. However, no matter what the ruling becomes, this is a necessity because this is not just widgets. Like when I asked the question at one meeting, do we have excess capacity in the school? It doesn't matter what the numbers are. If we don't have, and we had quotes for the price per student, that's
Yes,
great.
per-
What if we don't have, quote, the teachers, we don't have the building, we don't have the space?
Steve, we don't. I can tell you that. It's not an if, it's a
That's why
reality.
I'm specifically saying that our families are in it. But it's so important that no matter what the outcome, even if it's a draft or a stalking horse for, what you're going to predict, you got to have some foundation, even if it's elementary.
Well, that's why I questioned when this was supposed to have been done, because now serving on Sarah, I know that before we bring things to the council or to the planning board, a lot of times we have those types of financials and those pro formas done beforehand.
You have
in order
to.
That's why this entire process led yet another example of the wheels off the wagon here. This whole thing was a complete disaster. So this is just one more thing to add to the pile that a pro forma wasn't even done and presented in order to turn around and inform the public and inform us as to what this cost of these supposed projects were going to be. I needed to wrap my brain around just another part here. I thank Steve, and I thank you for coming up repeatedly, but I want to see that, but honestly, I just don't even know at this point where we go from.
Well, the only flaw in that logic is there's always going to be moving parts over 8 years, and you're going to be sitting here with taxes going through the roof and still say there's too many moving parts to do a pro forma to get an estimate. Can somebody build a building for you and say, I'll let you know what it costs after we build it? Doesn't
Well,
work.
not necessarily. I think you have to remember again where we are in the chronology of this, which is we are now likely going to pass a plan which will be given to the judge to adjudicate, right? And so theoretically at this point we don't have a plan, right? It has to be approved. And so you're right, things are going to change over time, but right now at 7:23 p.m. we couldn't do it. But I think, as this becomes formalized and we are mandated to do X, Y, and Z over the next 8 years, we will have to come up with a baseline and amend that baseline as needed because projects will come and go. So I think we're all saying the same thing. And
Except for one important
One
thing, Mr. Grillo.
correction.
what's that?
The one important thing is that this is in flux. And if you don't have a base, no matter what the original ruling, what's the baseline?
Well, I think this is our base.
And now you have this new proposal in front of the judge. Okay, somebody at this moment in time, assuming the judge is going to go with it, has got to be working on something that's going to show what this town needs to do. You can't just plan without knowing as you said, the moving parts. There's a lot of them.
I guess you could have a pro forma right now on one of the things that we do know exists, which right now we're fighting to try and get changed, but actually does exist. Whether or not we pass this or not, is the judge has ordered that Kaplan and National Lead who signed on as interveners, be granted their parcels and their property as laid out in the original Fair Share Housing Plan, which is included within that 300 pages. So technically, you have a constant, which is out of our hands right now, and the only thing we're doing is we're at the feet of the judge saying, these are all the reasons why you should not honor this. So do we do a pro forma based on those two pieces, although we are trying to fight to change them?
You do it on both. This way you know the lower end and you know the optimistic end that we hope would come out. If it comes out somewhere in the middle, that's where it is. But if you don't have a bottom and you don't have a top, what do you got?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I understand.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Ken?
Thank you, Mayor. Ken Olszewski, 108 North Edward Street in Sayreville. First of all, I want to compliment Councilwoman Kilpatrick for explaining this. I think you did a good job. It shows that you worked very hard and did a lot of reading on this. And it is very difficult for members of the public to really understand with the limited knowledge that's brought forth to us. What we're doing here is we're paying for the sins of the past. We're paying for and I'm talking about the past couple of years. With the professionals we had who were changed, I think, mostly from the urging of the people that came to these microphones. Some people didn't even agree with that first and voted against it, as I recall. So we're paying for this now. I'd like to ask, this 4-9 decision, what is that going to entail? Is there going to be another hearing before the judge, or is he simply, can you tell me a little bit about what this 4-9 date represents?
Yes, I can speak to that. On April 9th, the judge is going to enter a decision and an opinion on whether, and I'm just going to boil it down to the essence, whether you have to proceed with this particular plan that you don't like, or whether you're going to be able to control your own destiny and address and develop and adopt and implement a plan of your own choosing, the borough's choosing. So we talked about early in the game, we talked about late in the game. I think the best way to say it is we're at a critical point in the game. April 9th is going to be a very important day for this borough. Win or lose, you know, it's not the end, certainly, because if we win, I'm assuming that there will be an appeal, and vice versa is almost certainly true. But I think it's at a critical point. But to answer your question, you know, April 9th is going to be D-Day, basically. We're either going to know whether we're going to be free from this, the old deals that were made or supposedly made, or if we're going to be bound by them. So I think that's the best way to explain it.
Will our professionals have the ability to present more evidence at that date, or is this strictly a date for a decision from the judge based on what's been submitted?
Decision only, sir.
It's for a decision only.
But if I could add, I don't think that there's much more evidence that we could have presented. It was an exhaustive, comprehensive filing that we made. So.
Right. And thank God we've gotten involved with some professionals that have put us on the right track, that have taken the advice of people at public. I know as chairman of the Housing Authority, we work to correct some language that Susan Gruhl and your office had asked that would hopefully enable the Gillette Manor, the 100 units that we run there, to be incorporated into this plan. We did go to the nonprofit that owns Gillette Manor and asked them to change some things in the language, priorities for several residents, et cetera, which you were afraid of, and we did that. We accomplished that, and everybody along the line, I think, did their job. I hope I want to compliment the people that spoke before me tonight. Jim, and Steve and Ruth, because they were really good. And I hope you just don't blow off their comments and say, anybody else or next, please. I hope you go home and listen to those comments. Think about them. I'm sure you do. I often do those things. You get home and you think about it before you're going to sleep or wherever it is, playing with the dog or the kids, etc. But the stuff about notification, that is critically important to the success of this borough. As you recall, I stood here a couple of weeks ago at this microphone in reference to a Board of Adjustment thing and brought up that very same thing about nobody in the audience, nobody knows about it, et cetera. And maybe we're not doing our job. Maybe we ought to be scanning, going out and buying the home news, which most people don't get. Let's face it, nobody I know gets it. That we go out and buy the home news, and we scan the legal notices to know when the meetings. There's got to be a better way. I know you're accomplishing the legal aspect of this thing. I'm not questioning that. But there simply has to be a better way to inform the public and to get the public involved. I think the thing that Steve talked about, the push thing, is an excellent example of something. I'm not a social media guy. I'm not a high-tech guy. But there certainly are methods that we can accomplish this. And many other things don't even pertain to this that I'll be talking about at the next council meeting. But I really hope that you listen to that. Some of the points that Jim brought up, they're absolutely true. And I just want to go back and ask about this resolution and the settlement agreement and the fact that who was our Mount Laurel attorney at preceding this group?
Larry Sachs.
Larry Sachs was, okay, he was the Mount Laurel attorney. So this resolution is saying that he wasn't authorized and the mayor wasn't authorized to sign. Is that correct?
That is
What
correct.
we're saying? That they weren't authorized to sign based on the fact that the council hadn't agreed to it? Is that part of this?
Yes, that is part of the brief and part of the things that were argued before the judge.
I just want to make sure I understand that.
If you read the opening of that particular resolution, you'll see that the borough was waiting to finally negotiate complete and final settlement, and that was actually in the documents of that particular agreement. So if the language within that document actually stated that it was not a final settlement because the borough was waiting for the opportunity to have a final and complete settlement, how could anybody sign off on something that wasn't a final settlement?
Absolutely. I totally agree, and I agree with, I think it was Jim that said that we were kept in the dark. We didn't know about it. By the time we knew about it, everything had been signed and cut and dried and gone, and they were arguing before the judge, et cetera. So I hope that never happens again. I hope, and one of the things I want to say about being kept in the dark was this planning board meeting of March 29th, was that known and announced? I happened not to be at the last council meeting because, like other people have said that have been questioned, I have a life too. But was that announced by chance at the council meeting that there'd be a March 29th planning board held on, I think Jim said Holy Thursday, and a night that the planning board doesn't even normally meet? Did we know it and announce it?
No, I don't recall that.
I hope that when we do our person-by-person committee announcements, maybe one of the ways we can help here is to say a little bit more. Talk about what's going on. Planning is an example, but planning's not the only one. If you give the public a little more knowledge, I told you once before at this microphone, it really, you have to understand, it seems a little bit like you're trying to grow mushrooms with the public here. You know, and they grow mushrooms by keeping them in the dark and throwing a lot of manure on them. And if you don't understand that by this time, then you're not listening to the people who know. There's only a few people I know because most people don't know anything about this They don't feel they're being informed, and they feel by coming to the meetings, there's nothing they can do. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. Jim Robinson, 11 Burrell Square. I'm going to go back to that resolution that was adopted on Holy Thursday. Holy Thursday, as you know, was the night of the big betrayal. That resolution,
Good point.
did it anticipate or did it suggest, and let me preface this by saying, because you haven't been involved from the beginning when members of the public were involved. All throughout this process, people said nobody has a problem with the number of units of affordable housing. That's a laudable goal. Everybody supports that. We understand that obligation. What we have a problem with is the number of market rate apartments that we have to build in order to achieve that number of affordable housing. Did that plan suggest in any way that in order to achieve that laudable goal, we would even surpass that laudable goal? We might do what we had to do through changing our ordinances or incentives or things like that to get more than 785 if, in return, we could lower the number of market rate apartments. Was that discussed by the planning board? Was that anticipated? Was that?
Okay, it was not discussed. I was at that planning board meeting. It was not discussed. But when I look through the plan itself, because I understand it is a very common and you know, honestly, it's a valid issue in the Mount Laurel arena, which is that 20%. You have to build 5 to get one affordable unit. But when I look at this plan, there is some of that. There is some inclusionary zoning, but you're getting a lot of credits on 100% affordable developments, and so in other ways where it's not just development.
I'm talking about going forward. I'm not talking about what we have now. I'm talking about going forward. Is there a scenario where we can require additional, or through any means, through grants, through federal monies, anything like that, where we can get more one-for-one units to help us achieve that 785 so that we can then lower the thousands and thousands of market rate apartments that will be built under the planning board's plan?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Typically, what pops into my mind immediately is the 9% tax credit program. There are a lot of, it's very competitive, but it has been funded by the federal government. There was some concern that there was not going to be sufficient funding, but in this past spending bill, there's a sufficient amount of funding. So that's one way that a municipality can sidestep having to zone for 5 to get 1. But I think that there are at least 1 or 2 projects in there that we're looking to do that.
Jim, you do remember that Sarah came to the table and they signed on as interveners within this particular case when they realized what was happening and how we were going to have to accommodate for not only the COAH units but also the market
absolutely.
rate. So Sarah stepped to the plate and they said, listen, this is ridiculous, this is a travesty. We have a piece of property and we want to do what's right here for Sayreville. So they offered that River Road piece
I
as 100%.
recall that. In fact, I talked to Chairman Daddio and Mike Baker about that to encourage them to get involved.
And this council, actually, in order to make sure that we would be in a much better position in order to reach that 9% threshold, we realized there may even be a shortfall with that. So we took very proactive steps to say, in the event that there is a shortfall, in addition to that, that we pass a resolution of intent to bond in order to cover any additional monies that might need to be done in order to eliminate those market rate units at the 6-to-1, 7-to-1 ratio.
Okay, thank you. And I hope we would continue to go in that direction. Now, the issue of pro forma was raised before. It's not really on the resolution, but the mayor allowed the question, so I'm going to take a little bit of liberty in here. Councilman, the mayor asked you to state your qualifications, and I respect them. You're a New Jersey licensed planner, correct?
I am not.
You're not you're a New York licensed planner, not a New Jersey planner. Okay, well, but you're a planner.
Actually, New York doesn't require licensing.
Okay, and New York
would know
doesn't
that.
require a license?
Pardon me?
Did you say New York doesn't?
New York does not require licensing like New Jersey does. It's two.
Okay,
two
New
different
Jersey
ones.
does, though.
New Jersey, but I don't work in New Jersey.
Okay, All right, I thought you were a New Jersey licensed planner when the mayor talked about your qualifications. But anyway, you sat on the planning board, so you are familiar with the capital improvement plan that is a part of the master plan, right?
Not intimately, no.
Okay, all right. Well, that's something that perhaps ought to address the questions that Steve talked about. So maybe we should ask the planning board to take a look at that, because those things should be incorporated into that.
And I think
that might be
to
helpful.
that point, perhaps it really should be incumbent upon the new Mount Laurel committee that we have, which I believe is Councilman
Excellent idea.
Kilpatrick, and I believe Buchanan and Lembo. I might be wrong. You and, is it Mayor?
Is that-
I thought it was
no, it's
three.
only two.
Anyway,
Only two minutes.
either way, the Mount Laurel committee was passed, I guess, 2 meetings ago. I would imagine that the paramount concern of that committee should be developing a pro forma, and that is where the responsibility should lie. I didn't get a chance to say that to Steve when he came up, but I believe that is probably the direction we should go.
Very good. So I hope you do that. I hope you take that suggestion, Councilman, and I think they should get working on that, and that might be helpful going forward. Now, with respect to the resolution, I understand, Mayor, you didn't understand my questions before related to the resolution, but I'm going to read directly. These
Jim, I understand you
refer directly
perfectly.
to the resolution. It says here that the 2016 resolution did not authorize the execution of the settlement agreement, and further down it says we hold that it is non-binding and non-enforceable because the Borough Council never authorized the mayor to execute the agreement. My question then is, why then did you execute the agreement, Mayor?
Jim, I will have to ask the number of attorneys that I have serving the borough as to why it wasn't brought to my attention not to sign it. I only sign resolutions that are given to me by the governing body, that are approved by the governing body. I don't randomly sign things that have not been pre-approved.
The resolution that you're voting on tonight, the one you told me to limit my comments to, specifically say that...
I know what it says.
Oh, you do?
But I don't sign anything until it's been approved and then forwarded to me. And as I said, I do have umpteen attorneys who I depend on for advice, but apparently I'm not advised not to sign it. So if it is given to me, and for the most part, if it's done in good faith, I will sign the document.
So it was given to you, so you signed it?
It was approved by the governing body.
No,
There was
we
no
know,
warning
Mayor, we
from-
never saw that agreement.
I think the
No.
point of this resolution is that it was not approved by the governing body. That's
correct.
what it says
Well, Jim, we will have to look
in
into
the
this.
third
won't
and
we?
the sixth paragraph.
Let's look into this, Jim.
Okay.
Because I don't believe it for a second that I would sign anything secretly without the knowledge and the approval of the governing body.
Jim, if you read the brief that was put forth by our attorney, Jeff Serenian, you will also read in there that under certain certifications of individuals, that the council never even saw the agreement that was signed by the mayor until probably about 6 months after the actual document was signed. So we had no knowledge that the document was signed by the mayor. We hadn't even seen it until, quite frankly, I lost it in a meeting over there in 310. I put this on the record multiple times when, after the February 2016 meeting, where we had the entire document finally put before us to vote,
okay.
and I said, what the heck is this? Councilwoman Novak called me and said, were you aware that under this plan, we would be rezoning parcels of property? We would be using increased densities? I said, absolutely not. Had no idea, came in here, and that was like that was the bomb dropping on the council. And we stopped right there and said, we are not gonna move forward with this. Do you remember that, Jim? When we actually saw it back in February?
Yeah, I was not involved in
And that was true. It
2016
was
when the mayor
shoved.
signed that, and so the response is that umpteen attorneys told you to sign it?
That is true. Thank you, Terry,
Mayor?
for that. I agree.
There was an agreement attached to that. The council did agree to it.
We did not, not in its
What we
entirety.
saw said draft.
It said draft.
Everything said,
And-
everything said draft. That
and
came
the-
across my
Let me
desk.
ask
Yes,
this
but the
question.
Stamped as
resol-
draft.
no, it's not your fault.
no, I
Terry.
didn't prepare
It's
it.
not
It's
your
not
fault,
my
Terry.
fault.
At the time that it was
It's not your
signed,
fault, Terry.
Mayor, at the
No,
time
it's
that,
not. Everything came across my
at
desk.
the
said
time
draft.
that you signed it, did you know the properties involved?
Jim, I will look into this to find out when I signed it, but after you're done, I will explain the process that documents come to me. So, I will have to look, I will look into it with the borough clerk
But
as to how this
you
document.
don't know if when you signed it, it involved the
Jim-
Kaplan property or Mr. K's property.
You do know exactly how many documents come to me on a monthly basis to sign, and for me to have.
I
an
know that you
intimate
take an oath of
knowledge-
office that says that you're going to read the documents before you sign them.
Jim, there's no point in talking to you, so state your question, state your opinion.
All right, then the question is, why then, Mayor, did you sign that document that you were not authorized to sign according to this resolution?
Jim, I only sign documents that are presented to me. Next question.
All right, my next question then is, given the problem that apparently has caused, do you think maybe you should change your policy of signing any document that an attorney puts in front of you? Do you
Jim,
think it would be in the
I
best
do.
interest of the
Jim,
borough for you to read things
Jim,
before you sign
You are
them?
more familiar with parliamentary procedure and protocol and process than most people, most attorneys. So I will
Not sure
have
the
to, I
attorneys
will
would
have to look
appreciate that,
into
but-
how this happened.
He's talking about the past. Are we talking about this resolution? Are we looking to adopt the resolution or not? Or we,
Well, we seem to be going.
No, he's talking
protocol
about
has
this-
left because it's been allowed to leave.
Okay, well, you're going to take
What else
under...
do you
He's
have
talking
for
about
this?
the resolution.
Mayor, you said you're going to take under consideration whether or not meeting notices can be put on the website.
Come up
I'd
at the
also
next
ask you to
agenda.
take under consideration the idea of having people read things before they sign them.
Jim,
It would
they
be a
are
good
right.
idea. Thank you very much for your attention. I
Jim,
appreciate it.
as usual, you accomplished your goal. Steve, come on up.
Mayor, I did. I got better professionals hired over your objection. I did accomplish my goal.
Steve Malinowski, 28 Scarlet Drive in Portland. My question is surrounding that phrase in the resolution. What I'm hearing is a conflict from the mayor to the resolution. Does that put us in jeopardy? The mayor is saying that it was approved by the council. The document is saying it wasn't. So I'm confused. Does that put us in jeopardy?
The first paragraph that's on here is exactly what we agreed to. And in that paragraph, it says, subject to the borough's final negotiating a complete and final settlement agreement and housing element. What we agreed to was a draft. We assumed, because we were supposed to have a final negotiation.
Which
The
you
final
did not have.
negotiation, well, it was had by somebody and signed by the mayor, but the council was not involved in it.
No, and I'm going down to whereas Mr. Serenian's firm is saying that the agreement signed by the mayor is not binding and enforceable because the borough council never authorized the mayor to execute it. What I'm just asking...
We never
is-
saw it, so we couldn't
I'm not
have-
arguing that. What I'm arguing or asking is to... Mike, I'm sorry, I didn't get your last name. Okay. Mike, thank you. Does that put us in jeopardy?
Steve,
If
this
the
is,
judge
well, that's
requests-
part of our brief.
Part of the-
This is,
Oh.
it doesn't put us in jeopardy. These, what you have
Actually helps
before
us.
you is what was argued with evidence, with clear, defined chronology of documents to support the claims. No attorney, I think, in any, I would hope, would go into court in a matter like this and make statements like that without having evidence and proper certification.
Okay, because I'm just hearing the mayor say something different, that's all.
Well,
And I don't know if he was going to appear, I'm sorry, I don't.
Steve, just so you understand, for 18 years, I get a folder of documents to be signed. Minor, large, in between. Attorneys, the protocol is the attorneys vet it, check it for accuracy, for errors, for legality. It then comes to the clerk then goes through a similar process that the clerks go through. It is then presented to me for final signature. In that vetting process and in that legal protocol between the borough attorney, the board attorneys, the different attorneys, there has to be to read each one and to understand to the nth degree each one. I'm not an attorney, so it would take me the better part of a week to do a week's document with the aid of the different attorneys. It's not practical.
No, but isn't,
So my point is, I am dependent on the borough attorney, number one, the board attorneys, number two, special counsel, number three, to ensure that A, the document is legal, B, the document is in the best interest of the borough, and C, that it passed all the regulatory requirements of council approval.
okay,
So we are gonna have to research this to see if protocol was followed or if there was an error in following the protocol.
Okay,
My
and-
guess with Terry is protocol was absolutely followed.
Okay, and that wasn't really my question. Things happen,
But that
things
is
go
the
bump.
process.
I totally understand the process. However, I just didn't want to make sure that we go before a judge and someone says, but this is not true, the last paragraph on page 1.
Everything,
Nobody will contradict it.
believe me, everything was, the
Okay.
paperwork, it was very hard for Mr. Serenian to get it with the help
Okay.
of Vicky and Terry.
So if the one
He has all the
happened,
documentations to prove what's
you
said.
don't know.
What,
Okay.
I highly recommend that everybody,
Read
Mayor, I really think you should probably read the 4-ton brief, just so that you're aware of what the arguments were, because this litigation, we're going to get the final decision. This resolution, in short form, less than 2 pages, outlines exactly what was argued. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching this unfold since February 2016. Everybody watched as I put on the record, not once, not twice, at least 3 times. I flipped my lid. Dan Buchanan, you were in that room. You were on the phone. Councilman Lembo was in that room when Larry Sachs was at a baseball game and was calling in after that February meeting, and we were being told, you have to do this. And then we got even further saying, well, quite frankly, you already did it. What do you mean we already did it? It was being brought to us to vote on, and we voted not to move it forward. And we were being told, too bad, it's already done. I asked by whom. I was told by Larry Sachs. It was the borough. The borough executed this. And I said, I can do this all day. The borough is not human. Who signed it? Who was the human entity that signed it? The council signed it. I didn't sign it. Did you sign it? Did you sign it? I went down the list of individuals. Larry Sachs was still on the phone, and he was at that baseball game for spring training. Finally, repeatedly, I said, I want to know who signed it. He said, the mayor signed it. I said, who authorized this mayor to sign it? We didn't sign it. This went on and on and on. That was a very telling meeting shortly after that February meeting that was brought to us, when the wheels came completely off of everything. We are only here today with this before us. We are only here today with another mic, because we have many. You're like 3. We're only here today with Susan Gruhl's new amended plan. We are here today with Jeff Serenian with the best shot in hell we have at trying to roll this back and get it done, because on that Friday, when we got our packet, Councilwoman Novak read and saw that there was information in there that was never presented to this council, never presented to the public, about zoning changes, about density changes, about all other types of things. We are here today because of that meeting. We are here today with information in here about a document the mayor signed that I didn't know existed, nobody knew existed, Dan Frankel didn't know existed until I actually started an investigation on my own, saying, what the hell is going on? Day after day came in here and said, Dan, pull as much information as you could. He goes, did you ever see this? The mayor signed this. I believe it was in August. I said, I never saw it. Did anyone on the council see it? No one on the council saw it. Didn't even know the document existed. I am so confident after sleepless nights since that February meeting. I have made it a point, my dining room is littered still to this day with papers, to get to the bottom of this. I think we finally have. If you have not read the brief that was put forth, if you have not looked at the chronology of evidence, if you have not read the 350-page housing fair share plan that the planning board put forth and that we're looking at tonight with what Susan found, this was a disaster. Every single time I look at a mushroom now, I think of Ken Olszewski, because damn it, we were left in the dark. We were covered up with manure. That's how I felt as a council. And the public, you had to feel it even more, because your pile of manure was 15 feet higher than mine. But I'm telling you, I'm not going to ever fall victim to this again. I'm shaking off the crap
and hoping to hell that on April 9th, that the judge finally sees what happens here, which was a complete disservice to everyone watching, everyone living in Sayreville, and quite frankly, to us as well. It was a disservice to many of the people in this room that had no idea what was happening.
Well,
That's
Vicki-
the truth.
Thank you very much for that, because the council learning from those past mistakes is really critical to the town, to us, and I thank you for that. What it sounds like, in short, misrepresentation by our legal counsel, the planning board not doing their job, which says to me, as a council, we need to tighten up our controls and checks and balances going forward.
That's
Thank you.
paragraph 6.
You guys are
Thanks.
really doing a great job. Thank you.
Any other questions? Ken?
Ken Olszewski, 108 North Edward Street. I don't want to prolong this much longer, but I feel compelled to take the conversation before the signing of the document, and I'm going on what I heard at council meetings, that when this plan came up and you went into closed session, the word to the public was, this is going to be 5 minutes. I mean, is that for real, that you were going to discuss and adopt a fair housing plan in 5 minutes? And I'm not here to debate that all night, but I'm here to tell you how wrong that process is. That's what you call a quick pitch. And the other quick pitch that we're saying is things that Jim has talked about, I've talked about to other people, maybe not at this microphone, but the idea of having the council meetings and the agenda meeting the same night, it's another quick pitch where you can't wait to get done with this stuff. And we're all human. I sat there for 6 years. I know I'm not taking anything away from anybody, but I know nobody is that good that you can conduct the business of the borough that quickly. And if we look back to see what got us in trouble, I think some of those things are very telling. I can tell you when I sat there, the deal would be at the end of the meeting, and Gladys, God rest her soul, a wonderful person and a great clerk, would say, I don't have my resolutions back. And the guy always had them was Ken Olszewski. And my response was, yeah, they're right here, Gladys. I haven't had a chance to read them yet, but you'll get them as soon as I read them. So I think there's some lessons you need to take, and whether the person I neglected when I complimented everybody in the audience was Ruth. And when she made the comment that she didn't really feel comfortable going back to planning board meetings because of the way she was treated. That's a very sad commentary. And you, Mayor, who are a member of the planning board and responsible, should make sure that that commentary gets back to the planning board, and nobody should ever be treated that way. Whether it's at a planning board meeting, whether it's at a council meeting, whether it's at a special hearing like this, because we're the people who are footing the bills. And again, I'm going to go back to when I sat there, and no doubt about it, we're all human. You'd say, oh, God, here's this person coming again. I don't want to mention the names, but anybody who's been around would know them. Same thing over and over. But, you know, it was always there in my mind. They have a right to stand at this microphone and ask the questions and have their comment. Don't ever forget that. We're your constituents. We deserve this. And this is not the only issue. I'm going to speak on this Monday night on a few other things. We need to finally stand up for Sayreville. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Ken, I'd just like to say, I only had 1 year serving with McCormick, but I'll tell you, the man, no matter what anybody said or did or how long they took, he showed them respect. He never talked down to them. He let them have their piece, and then he thanked them for what they had to say.
Any other questions or comments? Being no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion to close the public portion and to adopt the resolution.
Second.
Now Vicky's gonna,
Roll call
wait a minute. Is that just for closing?
to close
Okay.
and to adopt the resolution.
Okay, then let Vicky do it. Second.
Roll call, Terry. This is to close the public portion and adopt the resolution.
Councilpersons Gilpatrick?
Yes.
Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes, but before I formally cast my vote, I just want to correct the record. The mayor brought up my professional credentials as a courtesy to Ms. Mahoney to discuss a general planning matter. I want to just clarify, I'm not a licensed planner in New Jersey because I don't work in New Jersey, just as I imagine that Councilwoman Kilpatrick is a wonderful teacher, but probably not licensed in the state of Delaware because she doesn't teach there. That doesn't make her any less of a teacher. So I just want to make sure that the people in this room understand how that works. I didn't appreciate being belittled professionally, but I will vote yes to please advance this resolution. Thank you.
Lembo? Yes. Novak?
Yes, under protest.
Is that 2 under protest?
2 under protest, just want to really.
Or does it negate the protest?
You gotta help me out here, Tara.
I'm sorry.
Do we have anything for closed? Oh, do we have anything for closed?
No items for closed.
No items for closed? Open to public on any and all matters? With nobody coming forward then, motion to
I
close
moved.
public?
Move to close the public portion.
Do I have, public session is closed, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. A
Second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are done here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody that came. I appreciate it.
I'm sorry? What do you mean, it's getting signed right now?
Oh.
I didn't do anything.
You all right?
Good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. No problem.
Okay. Payne? Go home.
Oh, that means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
Ugh.
I just want total units.
I'm gonna give it to the mayor for the signature. If he doesn't sign it, no, then I'll just want it. Thank you very, long time ago, I just wanted to be in the shirt. And then I got smart, and I said.
Well, it is. Now you have a nice pension. Right here. That's air. 100%, so that's how you need it.
All right, Mary, let me get in here.
Engineering development.
Thank you very much.
These
Tell
are
Mike,
gonna be the ones
tell
that
Mike
are
we missed him, but.
I'm not signing them.
for market plus.
This is the resolution.
So what I'm saying
Returning it
is,
to me unsigned.
Unsigned.
to get 170 affordable units,
That way,
4 times
we'll make it.
in total.
I think that's why you had them made.
Dan made them.
Do you have a copy of the whole 300 pages, Vicki? You want one of these?
Yeah, I
Oh,
sent
I
it to
didn't
everybody
read the whole
electronically.
thing.
There's a 2-sided version.
I didn't
and one
read that.
sided version.
I didn't read that whole thing.
With what I had, and then I cross-referenced it with what was in there originally that came from, because Susan's document, I actually had to lay out.
In other words, you have
Oh, yeah.
they're already creditworthy, they're already
Then
built.
it was so much easier.
So this is the area that you have to look, and like you said, add these up, multiply it by 5.
Oh, not
So let's say 260 times 5, 0, 0.
Let me just run downstairs and shut that recorder off.
Okay.
I'll be right up. Okay.
30. That's 1,300? Yeah, give or take. Give or take. No.
Good night, Terry.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you finally. I've
Jeff
heard
speaks
so
very
much-
highly of you. Goes to a warrior. That's all right. Listen, I wanted, one of the things that I wanted to say about the pro forma idea. Yes. I gotta tell you, I spent.
I thought he's supposed to sign things that you guys approve.
Oh, yeah, Terry will give it, Terry will give it, what she's saying is that the mayor signed it.
Oh, okay.
But that doesn't matter.
The mayor just returned it to me unsigned, but the council sponsors it, he just approves it, and he didn't approve it. I have to run downstairs, yeah. Yeah.
It's a very good idea, and it is an idea that I don't know why it towns haven't really focused in on. You know, we represent 60-something towns. I mean, I've been working for Jeff exclusively for 16 years, and I'm only at a couple of towns. One of them is doing it right now. I spent the whole day on it, where they hired Bob Powell.
Well, we've got Bob
Yeah.
too, that's why I was going to say, I'm gonna call him out, or I'm gonna talk to Jeff and grab him,
Mhm.
turn around, and we can call up with meeting with the Mount Laurel Committee to authorize Bob to actually go forward and do this. That was one of the important reasons why I wanted Bob,
Yeah.
because I felt like telling you the shenanigans that went on here.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I feel comfortable, well, I mean, Jeff speaks highly of me, he's like my hero, like, I love him.
And Jeff, it's weird. I don't know. You don't know me long enough to know, but Jeff and I are like the yin and yang in the office because he's like an idiot savant
Yes.
with Mount Laurel stuff.
Yes, unbelievable.
But he's got
He's
tunnel
focused.
vision, and I a lot of times have to say, Jeff, I'm like his consigliere